guys, welcome back to Learning with JD. Today's session we are going to talk about how are you supposed to apply for your PMP examination. How should you prepare for it on the pmi.org website? What the process is all about. If you have any other doubts, you can drop me a comment. Meanwhile, do subscribe to my channel in case if you've not done that, because in this channel, we talk about a lot of quick tips with regard to PMP and CAPM examination. So let's begin today's session. Alright, so let's start with the application timeline as to what is the timeline for your application. The very first thing is your application submission. So you have 90 days to complete your application submission once you have started it. Then your application completeness review takes approximately 5 days from the time you have applied it on the system. It will take 5 days for you to for them to come back to you whether your application has been approved or no. There are certain applications that get into an audit process. Now this is just a minimum of 1 or 2% of the applications that fall into audit process. Just in case if your application is one of them, it will get into an application process. You will have 90 days to send your audit materials. They will come back to you asking some clarification in case of, any documents they further need in terms of understanding your eligibility, etc. So you will have 90 days to do that. Once that happens, your application is approved, your application payment process starts. Once you submit the credential fees payment, you can schedule your exam. So your scheduling of the exam will happen only after you have made the payments. Now you have multi-choice examination eligibility for 1 year. So you have an option for 1 year. From 1 year from the date of application process, you can take the exam up to 3 times during this 1 year. Okay, so in case if you applied for examination, you've not been able to clear for it, you can take up to 3 times during 1 year. You're now coming to the certification cycle. Your certification cycle begins from the date you pass your exam. Okay, so that will start from that particular cycle. So once you have cleared your examination, your certification cycle begins and you have to maintain that credentials in every 3 years. You are required to earn and report 60 PDUs, as we call the professional development units, within a cycle of 3 years. And the credential renewal is mandatory for maintaining your PMP certification. You can complete the renewal process once you have earned and reported 60 PDUs as per the requirements and submit the renewal fees. Once you submit the renewal fees, you will get the fresh certificate will come to your residential or come to your mailing address. Now credential suspension for 1 year occurs on the 3rd anniversary of the day you pass the exam if you have not fulfilled the CCR, which is the continuing certification requirement, which means that if you have not collected those 60 PDUs, your certificate may get into suspension. During this period, you will be unable to use the PMP designation. You cannot tell that you are a PMP certified because your credential has been suspended. Now, credential expiry occurs at the end of the suspension period if you did not fulfill the CCR. Now, which means what? That you have 3 years to maintain your certificate. In case you have not done that, 1 year your credential will be suspended. After that, even if you are not able to complete that for 1 year, your credential will be expired. After credential expiry, if you hold the credentials again, you must reapply, which means you will have to again appear for your examination. You again have to apply for your examination. Now let's see what are the PMP eligibility criteria. We've already discussed about this in the previous video, but let me just quickly give you a brief about what it is. So the first criteria for completing your PMP is that you should have a secondary degree, which means that you've completed your grade 12 and your minimum experience is of 5 years, that is 60 months unique, non-overlapping professional project management experience. At least for 60 months you should have had a non-overlapping experience. It should not be an overlapping experience, okay? And you would have completed 35 contact hours. That is again mandatory that you should have completed 35 contact hours of formal education. Now the second part is that you would have 4 years of degree, that is bachelor's degree or globally equivalent degree. Here in this case a minimum 36 months, that is 3 years of unique non-overlapping professional experience is important. So in the previous one it was 60 months, in this case it is 36 months. And again the criteria remains the same, 35 hours of formal education, 35 contact hours of formal education. And the third criteria is that your bachelor's or post-graduation degree from GSE, bachelor's degree or master's or global equivalent. Here in this case your minimum 2 years, that is 24 months unique overlapping professional experience is required from your professional career perspective. And again the criteria for project management education is 35 contact hours. That is something that you will have to fulfill. So if you fall into any of these 3 criteria, you are eligible for appearing for your PMP examination. Now how do you record your experience and education on the application? Now let's see how do you do that. So the number of months of project management experience, how do you calculate that? For each month in which you worked on multiple overlapping projects, you can only count the time spent on one project. Now in case if you have worked on multiple projects, only it will be counted as only one project. You remember we were talking about non-overlapping project. Using this example below, the time spent working on project 1 from January to April would count as 4 months towards the eligible requirement, while the time spent on project 2 during May to June would count as only 2 months towards the eligible requirement. Understood? Because it cannot be an overlapping project. It can be only one from here and then here to from here to here. Yeah, so this will be only counted as 2 months. Therefore, project 1 and project 2 equal has 6 months. It will not give you a total of 2 different projects. It is just one project which is just 6 months. Example of an overlapping project. Got that? Contact hours of project management education. At least verify at least 35 contact hours of specific instructions that address learning objective in project management. Record all education hours regardless of when they are accrued. This coursework must be completed at the time you submit the application. Now talking about the PMP application, you can satisfy the educational requirement by demonstrating the successful completion of the courses, workshop and training sessions offered by one or more of the following types of education providers. You have to be very sure there are a lot of education providers in the market that can be fake and which may not be recognized by PMI. It has to be either or from all these. You cannot be doing from any local. It has to be from any of these, which means that it has to be a PMI's REP. REP is registered educational provider. You can just get a list of it on the pmi.org.in website. PMI authorized training partners, any of the PMI chapters, employer company sponsored programs, training companies or consultant, that is from training schools, distant learning companies including an end of course assessment, university, college, academic and continued educational programs. So it has to be from any of these. Now let us see what is the application process and how much is the PMP certification fees. Once you do the online submission of the application, the process time is approximately 5 calendar days. Although it happens before that, but that's the process time. This will not be applicable in case if there is some audit that comes up. If the audit comes up, then there are more further information required by PMP and you may have to submit all that. And the PMP certification fee is based on 2 criteria, whether you are a member of PMI or you are a non-member. Just in case if you are a member, the fees will be lesser. And you can pay the fees in both US dollars or euros depending upon your country. You can choose whatever you want to make a payment through. If you can see, this table defines what are the different fees that will be applicable for a member and a non-member. Moving on, the PMP Examination Information. So let me just give you an examination perspective. The PMP examination comprises of 200 multiple choice questions. Out of 200 questions, 25 are considered pre-test questions. Now, pre-test questions do not affect the score and are used in examination as an effective and legitimate way to test the validity of future examination questions. All questions are randomly placed throughout the examination. You will not have questions like first they will ask you about initiating, then executing, or first planning and then monitoring and controlling. No, it will be all random. Number of scored questions, which means from 225 are only pre-test questions. Number of scored questions are 175. Unscored questions are 25 and the total examination questions are 200. The allocated time to complete the center-based examination is 4 hours. Allocated time is 240 minutes. It may take some candidates less than the allocated 4 hours to complete the examination. The exam is divided into 2 sections. You will have 10 minutes break once you complete the first section. Once the break has begun, you will not be able to review questions from the first part. Remember, when you are appearing for your first part, you have to make sure that you complete all those and review them as well. Either during the break or the second section, you will not be able to review the questions on the first part. When you are signed back in, you will have the remaining allocated time to complete the second part. In total, you will have 4 hours to respond to 200 questions. The examination is preceded by a tutorial and followed by a survey, both of which are optional and which will take approximately 5 to 15 minutes to complete. The time used to complete the tutorial and the survey is not included in the examination time of 4 hours. It is always better that you do the tutorials because it will just help you, get into that phase of appearing for an examination. Also, I suggest that you should appear for the survey because survey is going to help PMI improve their examination process. The PMP Exam Blueprint. Now, let me give you a perspective about how should you study and which are the most important topics. From the domain perspective, initiation will have 13% questions. Planning will have 24% questions. Execution will have 31% questions. Monitoring and controlling will have 25% and closing will have 7%. If you see, your most important domain is execution, which will have 31%, followed by monitoring and controlling and planning. Now these together will apply around 80% of your examination questions. Initiating and closing will have 20% of the questions from your examination. Alright, so guys, that is it from my end. If you have some more queries, you can review on the complete information on eligibility requirements. You can see the PMP handbook available on www.pmi.org.in. It gives you all the information. Now this IN is for India, depending upon which country you belong to. Please refer to the PMP handbook. Meanwhile, like, share and comment on my video. If you have any queries, do drop me a comment and I'll definitely come back to you. Please subscribe to my channel so that you never miss any notification of the new videos that we keep on uploading. Till then, keep connecting, keep studying and all the best.